Well, the NFL is full of teams. But where do those teams rank? Let's rock. What's going on, guys? My name is Antonio, and welcome back to the All Around Sports Podcast. Today, I'm going over all the NFL teams' rankings entering the 2024 season. Now, I've created 5 different categories: Super Bowl favorites, which are the teams that are high in contention; Super Bowl contenders that have not won a Super Bowl and are right now in that category, both along with playoff contenders, non-playoff teams, and the bottom tier team, called bottom tier as I like to call it, terrible, mediocre teams. But anyways, I'm going to be ranking each of these guys individually. So I'll be going over each of the NFL teams in each of the categories. I'm going to start off from the Super Bowl favorites all the way down to the terrible, mediocre teams. But before we get this video started, if you guys do enjoy this video, please be sure to smash that like button down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. And for now, let's get this video started. And before we get started, I don't have one of those tier lists as we see from other YouTubers. I kind of do it in my own tweaky kind of way. But for now, let's get this started with the Super Bowl favorites. So the first Super Bowl favorite, no surprise here, the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs have been one of the top teams in the NFL for the past few years. They have been back-to-back Super Bowl champions and are seeking the three-peat, which is the most rarest thing in sports. I don't think you're going to get back there, but they are right now a Super Bowl favorite because their new offense, including Xavier Worthy, and also along with guys like Marquise Hollywood Brown, you got Rasheed Rice. We're still waiting on his situation. Jared Wiley, Travis Kelce, Isaiah Pacheco, and you still got Chris Jones on the defensive side. You lost L'Jarius Sneed to the Tennessee Titans. But I do believe this team could be a really good team, and they might have a really good chance of three-peating. Next up is the Detroit Lions. The Lions. This team was in the top spot last year. They were one of the top favorites, right there with the Niners. They had the lead against the 49ers going into the NFC Championship game of 24-7 before giving it up to the 49ers with that amazing catch by Brandon Ayuk. I don't understand why he's in that trade category. But they also got new weapons, including DJ Reader, which I don't know why the Cincinnati Bengals let him go.
I don't know. I never counted. I am not really a math guy.
But still, I don't understand why the Bengals let him go. He's a big piece. And then you also bring in Terrion Arnold from the draft to join up alongside his former college teammate in Brian Branch. And this team is going to be a really good team next year. It is going to they are right now the top front runners in the NFC in my personal opinion. And then next up is the Houston Texans. The Texans are now in this category because they have one of the top rosters in the NFL, and they're more all in than the Dallas Cowboys. Anyway, sorry, I just had to bring that up. But anyways, they went out there and got Stephon Diggs, which we'll see how that situation goes. And they also got out there and got Joe Mixon. They got Daniil Hunter. They are loaded, and they are right now the top front runner with the Jacksonville Jaguars, which I believe the Jaguars will win the division. But the Texans, they got a good chance. But now moving on to the next team, which is the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens have been in this section for a few years. They have Lamar Jackson, who has been an amazing quarterback during the regular season. They had a good chance last year before the great play by L'Jarius Sneed that saved the Kansas City Chiefs the game. And if Zay Flowers would have gotten that touchdown, the Ravens would have won that game, in my personal opinion. But that's another story for another day. but the Ravens are one of the top favorites. Next up is the Green Bay Packers that put an absolute butt whooping on the Dallas Cowboys. I'm sorry. I can't help trolling the Cowboys. I can't help it. It's too easy. Sorry, not sorry. But, anyways, the Packers, Josh Jacobs is now in there after letting go of Aaron Jones to the Minnesota Vikings, which I'll touch on when I go over the Vikings. The Packers, they are looking good, and they now have yet another Hall of Fame quarterback to join their ranks in Jordan Love. I don't know how they keep on doing it, but for some reason they just keep doing it again and again. But the Packers, they are going to be really good. They have loads of second year and third year receivers. They are a dangerous young team in the NFL right now. And then last team in the Super Bowl favorite category is the Cincinnati Bengals, the kryptonite to the Kansas City Chiefs. And with the only quarterback to ever beat Mahomes in a playoff game. Now, Cincinnati, I know there's going to be a lot of questions surrounding Joe Burrow. I know he's going to be relatively good next year. He's going to be back. He has got a lot of weapons around him. He's still got T. Higgins. He's still got Jamar Chase. He's still got loads of guys, and including getting Mike Gesicki and also along with Zach Moss. They still got a good defense. They are going to be one of the top front runners. But now let's move on to the Super Bowl contenders. First team in the Super Bowl contenders category. Now I have four. The first team is the San Francisco 49ers that lost in the Super Bowl again.
Time to abandon ship.
Now I put them in the Super Bowl contenders and not Super Bowl favorites because they've been a favorite before and have failed just like this past year. They need to prove that they can be a Super Bowl favorite in my eyes. Because when you have a coach by the name of Kyle Shanahan, you need to show up. You had Debo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, and Christian McCaffrey on your offense. And you had Javon Hargrave, you had Chase Young, Nick Bosa, and also along with Eric Armstead, Fred Warner, and Charvarius Ward in your defense, and you still couldn't get it done. And we have got to come to a point on to put the blame on Kyle Shanahan. Because I don't care what anybody says. I don't care. Because Kyle Shanahan has been responsible for each and individual playoff loss. Each individual one. Whenever we when the Niners lost the Super Bowl, who were we putting the blame on? Steve Wilkes. He got fired. When are we going to start to put the blame on Kyle Shanahan? You had three chances. One with the Atlanta Falcons. You had three chances to bring it back, and you couldn't get it done. You need to prove yourself. And I believe if Kyle Shanahan doesn't get him to the promised land, which is a Super Bowl title, he's going to be up and out of there before you know it. But that's another topic for another day. But next up is another Super Bowl contender now. Lots of people might question me on this. It's the Buffalo Bills. The Bills, although losing Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, they brought in a few new receivers to complement Josh Allen. They brought in Keon Coleman, Marcus Valdez Scantling, Chase Claypool, who has not had a breakout year since his days back when he was with the Steelers, and also along with you still got Dalton Kincaid, you got Dawson Knox, and you got James Cook. And this Bills team, it's really good. Their defense might have some questions around Von Miller, but other than that, Josh Allen, as long as Josh Allen is on their squad, they are a Super Bowl contender. I believe Josh Allen will mature as he grows away from having an all-star wide receiver. I believe he will mature in this category. But now we move on to the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles, they got a new revamped squad and are way better at drafting than the Dallas Cowboys. Sorry, I just can't help it. I can't help it, all right? But, anyways, the Eagles, they went after Saquon Barkley and got him. They went after also, along with three great defensive players in the draft, Quinton Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, and Jeremiah Trotter. That gives me vibes of Bobby Wagner. And you pair him up already with Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, and Darius Slay. I mean, what is happening with this Eagles team right now? Because the Eagles, they are so good at drafting. They have gone after every single key player that they need, unlike the Cowboys that we all know. But, anyways, down to the next team, which is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, the Jaguars I put in this category because of Trevor Lawrence. He is getting paid all of that cash, and I believe he's going to show up in the late parts of the season because you are in competitiveness with you are in contention with the Texans for the division. It is going to be the battle between the Jags and the Texans. It is going to be a great rivalry game to see go into the divisional rounds. But if the Jaguars can win the division, they have a really good chance. You got Gabe Davis, who I mentioned earlier when I was going over the Bills. You also have Christian Kirk. You got Evan Ingram, and you also got Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Etienne. This offense is really good, and you now bring in Eric Armstead to complement the pass rushing of Josh Hines Allen. That is amazing on how they did that. I don't know how they got Eric Armstead, and I don't even know why the 49ers released him in the first place.
Huh?
Anyways, that's another time for another day. But that is my Super Bowl contenders area. Now it is time to move to the playoff contenders. So now into the playoff contenders. I have 12 teams in this area. So I took a lot of debate into all of these. First up in this category is the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins, they when they went up against Kansas City in the playoffs, they looked like legitimate frozen sushi out there.
Why is it so cold? Why do I even play in this weather for crying out loud?
But I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I create these memes myself. Or, well, some of them are due to CapCut, but also I just do my own voiceover in that. But, anyways, this Miami Dolphins team has a capability to be a playoff contender. I don't think they're going to beat the Bills for the playoff, or I do believe they can be in contention with the Bills for the division. But if they cannot play at home, this team's going to be a one and done team because they cannot play on the road. They can't stand can't stand the weather. They cannot stand the elements. And if they cannot stand the elements, you're going to be a one and done team, and that is a fact. But you bring in OBJ, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Raheem Mostert, and Devon Achane. And then also along with that pick, Jalen Wright, which I believe it was a good pick. But anyways, moving down to the next team with the number one pick, the Chicago Bears and Caleb Williams. Now, this one is kind of in question because we have not seen Caleb Williams play a game yet. But with the roster around him, he has the best opportunity than Justin Fields had. He has great receivers all around him. You got Rome Odunze, you got DJ Moore, you got along with Keenan Allen, you also got a great running back in DeAndre Swift. You also got Gerald Everett, and also along with Cole Kmet. And the defense is only going to get stronger. And if this team can prove that they are a playoff team, I could see them going maybe to the divisionals. I could see them maybe winning a playoff game. But anyways, that is why I have the Bears in there. But next up is a team that's been highlighted as a Super Bowl contender. I'm not buying it yet. The New York Jets. I am not buying the hype around this team. I am not buying it because of these reasons. The Jets have not made the playoffs in 14 years. They have had 8 straight losing seasons. And even though you bring in the guy known as the bad man, you have to show yourselves first. You have to prove yourselves because Aaron Rodgers, the last year that he performed really good was when he was in 2020, where he got beat by the GOAT, Tom Brady, in the NFC Championship game. But The Jets need to prove themselves before we go to any conclusions. But anyways, down to the next team. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now let me explain. Tampa Bay was a great team last year. They were amazing. Baker Mayfield silenced a lot of critics by winning a playoff game against the Eagles, which I actually went undefeated that week. But anyways, the Buccaneers, they got Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, and also along with Rashad White. This team is really sneaky. This one is going to be a really sneaky team. Todd Bowles and that blitz heavy defense. This, I mean, I was surprised it was close when they were close to beating the Lions, and they absolutely spanked the behinds out of Philly. But anyways, down to the next team, which happens to be my team, the Seahawks. Now I put them in the playoff contention area because we lots of people have said that this team could be a really sneaky team. Some people have said that this team could be a outside the playoff team. I believe they can be a playoff team because of these reasons. Number one, Mike McDonald is in there. He is one of the best defensive minds in the NFL. And also, number two, new coordination. You got Ryan Grubb in there. And this offense is going to be better than it was because I was sick and tired of Shane Waldron calling plays because I was so sick and tired of that predictable offense. I was so sick and tired of it. And I hope that they change things around. But when you have a guy on the receiver core like DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, JSN, and I mean, Geno Smith, I still don't fully trust him to win a playoff game. But if they can make a playoff appearance, then that would be good. But anyways, if I do believe this, if Geno Smith cannot get the Seahawks to the playoffs next year, or regardless, the next following season, Sam Howell will get the start because I see a lot of potential in him. And he was in a terrible situation in Washington at the nation's capital. But now they're probably in a better situation now that they got a lot of new weapons. But that's why I have the Seahawks in there. Next up is probably America's joke, the Dallas Cowboys that got spanked out of the playoffs again. I'm sorry. I can't help it. Sorry. But anyways, I put them in the playoff category because A, they are not a Super Bowl contender. B, they lost a lot of weapons during the offseason. And C, they need to show up. They have to show up when it counts. They need to prove themselves that they can get to a Super Bowl, which you are declared to be. But when you have Micah Parsons and Trevon Diggs, who is still an overrated corner, by the way, and you also have Deron Bland and Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, Jake Ferguson, Zeke. You need to show up and you need to prove yourselves. And if they can't win a Super Bowl, we're going to deem their season a failure every time because they have not made an NFC Championship game since 1996. But, anyways, moving down to the next team. The next team I put on here is the Indianapolis Colts. Now, the Colts, this team I do believe has the potential to be a sleeper team in the NFL. And primarily because of Anthony Richardson. Now, week one, let's flash back to week one. I had picked the Jacksonville Jaguars in a blowout game. And I did not expect it to be close. I was not expecting it at all because of what happened last year, of the year prior. But when I saw Anthony Richardson play, I was like, damn. I mean, my goodness. I was not expecting that type of play from Anthony Richardson. I do believe he is a great quarterback, and he's going to be a star. But if he can stay healthy, this Colts team is going to be a playoff team. And because they have the offense to do it, they got Michael Pittman, you got Adonai Mitchell, you got Jalen, uh, Jonathan Taylor, and you also have what was that guy's name? I think it was Moss. I don't know, but anyways, the Colts are a playoff team. But next up on this list is the Atlanta Falcons. Now the Falcons are in this category because of Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is now in there which could lead this Falcon team from out of the abyss to finally make a playoff appearance. They have not made a playoff appearance since 2019. But the Atlanta Falcons, I do see a lot of potential in them. Their new revamped offense, they had the 11th ranked defense last year, which, and I've talked about this when I was going over the Steelers. How do you have the 17th ranked offense and go 7-10 with the number 11 defense? And I've said this. Arthur Smith's weakness is mediocre quarterbacks, which I'll be touching on later on when I go about on over the Steelers. But anyways, next up is the Las Vegas Raiders. Now I put the Raiders on here because the Raiders. Many people are saying that they need a quarterback. I believe Gardner Minshew could be that guy for the moment because Gardner Minshew, many people forget this. He almost led the Colts to the playoffs last year. He almost led them to the playoffs. If he would have beaten the Texans, if he would have beaten the Texans, we would have had a whole different story about this. We would have had a whole different story. But, anyways, enough about that. But now moving down to the next team, which is the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns, Deshaun Watson is still their quarterback, and if Deshaun Watson can break out to the form that he was when he was with Houston, when he was back in his prime, before the lawsuits came into place, this team could be a playoff team. This team could be playoff bound. But now moving down to the next team, a division rival of the Seahawks, the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams, despite losing their Hall of Famer edge rusher Aaron Donald,
And it cost him. No! That 15-yard line. He's not happy about being escorted out of the stadium.
Yes, he's finally gone! Finally! Yes!
they still have one of the top offenses. Matthew Stafford is still the better quarterback in the NFC West, right ahead of Brock Purdy. You still got Cooper Cup, you still got Puka Nakula, you still got a load of pieces in there. And I believe the Rams are going to be dangerous this year. I believe they could be sneaky, but they're going to have some growing pains with losing Aaron Donald. But then the last team of the playoff contender section. Now, I might shock a lot of people here. The Washington Commanders. Remember, last year we didn't even expect the Texans to be in this position because after CJ Stroud got drafted. Caleb Williams ended up, not Caleb Williams, the number one pick last year, Bryce Young, ended up absolutely crumbling. And then CJ Stroud made the playoffs. What if we see a similar thing here? I mean, Jaden Daniels, I thought for sure that he could go number one because A, he was a Heisman Trophy winner. B, he was one of the better quarterbacks during the last stretch of the college football season last year. And C, he was a really amazing quarterback. He was amazing. And if this guy can show up, you have Austin Eckler in your backfield. This dangerous team could be sneaky. And they have my Hall of Fame linebacker, Bobby Wagner, which I referred to earlier when I was talking about Jeremiah Trotter of the Eagles. But, anyways, that is why I have the Commanders in there. Now that those teams are wrapped up, I'm moving on to the non playoff teams. First up, I might regret this because I have this team as a sleeper team. The Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings, despite them having a really good team, I do think they are just a little shy of everyone else in the division. I do think they're still going to need to grow a little bit in order to contend with those teams. And then next up is the New Orleans Saints. The Saints are a really good team. Their defense is amazing, but they need to show up. They need to get going on offense if they have any chance of making the playoffs. And then also next up is the Tennessee Titans. The Titans, after losing Derrick Henry to the Ravens, as I referred to earlier, I believe they could still be decent, but I don't see them making the playoffs. But then the last team of this category, the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers, even though they got Jim Harbaugh, I'm not sold with their offense yet. We need to see if Justin Herbert can connect with the rookies after they lost lots of weapons. But that's the non-playoff category. I wanted to get through it very quick so I can go over the last section. But without further ado, let's get to the last section. So now we're in the terrible, mediocre teams area. But, and man, I took a lot of debate into all of these. And pretty much it's all true. First up, I might shock a little some people here. The Pittsburgh Steelers. Let me explain why. The Pittsburgh Steelers went out there and got Russell Wilson, who is a bad guy in the locker room. He is terrible in the locker room. His aura is it's bad. It pretty much the only time that he's good is when he's with Sierra. But anyways, Russell Wilson, now him being in the locker room, he is his aura. He pretty much destroyed his own career. He destroyed his own career because during his last year in Seattle, after he got injured, he was so upset of not being protected. And then he went to Denver, and then it got worse. And then he was yelled at by not just the defensive lineman in the game against Carolina, but also again on Sean Payton during the night game of when the Lions had hosted the Denver Broncos last year. But the but Russell Wilson, this guy is a bad aura in the locker room, especially from last season. I mean, the locker room was getting torn apart. They and Najee Harris was losing faith in Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky and Mason Rudolph. He was losing faith in all of them. And the fact is, Russell Wilson, he has this bad aura about him that if you do terrible, he's going to get on your behind. And especially since he has not performed very well since his first few years when he was with Seattle. And when he got his paycheck from the Seahawks, he was 3-6 in the playoffs after that. That's that's Dak Prescott numbers right there, folks. That's Dak Prescott numbers right there. But even though the Steelers, their defense is good, their offense is trash. Their offense needs to show up. And as I had mentioned when I was going over the Atlanta Falcons, I still believe that Arthur Smith is not an upgrade over Matt Canada. Let me go over some stats here that I looked up on these two. I referred to these during the time of when I went over that situation. Let me go over some stats here to all those Steeler fans that are probably watching this. Arthur Smith, during his time as a head coach, record 24, 21 and 30. Matt Canada's record 40 and 29 and 1. And then, total offensive record last year. Arthur Smith, 17th ranked overall offense. Matt Canada, 26th. And the Falcons had the number 11th defense. And I'll be touching on that in a second. And then quarterbacks worked with. The Arthur Smith worked with Matt Ryan, Marcus Mariota, Desmond Ritter, and Taylor Heineke. And Matt Canada, he worked with Big Ben, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Titan now, Kenny Pickett, and Mitch Trubisky that can't throw a dang accurate pass for crying out loud. This is what I'm talking about when I'm explaining this guy. This is what I'm talking about. Arthur Smith, you had the number 11th ranked defense. You had the number 17th ranked overall offense. What was your record last year? 7-10. 7-10. And people are saying that this guy is an upgrade over Matt Canada. Matt Canada has 19 more wins than Arthur Smith as an offensive coordinator. And I don't want to hear it from any Pittsburgh Steelers fan. I went over the stats. I went over statistics. And name me one team that has the number 11th ranked defense and has the 17th ranked offense that goes 7-10. Name me one team, Steeler fans. Name me one team, and I'll take it all back. I didn't think so. But anyways, moving down to the next team. The New England Patriots are in this category as well. The Patriots, despite them getting a quarterback in the draft, they are still a swamp. And the Patriots will be lucky if they go another half a century without being this good, without being good, and pretty much good news because the dynasty is dead. But anyways, down to the Giants. The Giants are also on this list. That like the Patriots, they are a swamp.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
I mean, every time the New York Giants are playing, if you're a Giants fan, you want to vomit at the TV because that's how terrible this Giants team is. And the Giants, they played against the Seahawks in week four's Monday night game. They got absolutely demolished. They had 11 sacks on them, and I don't think that's going to change in the next time they face up against one another. But we'll see what happens. Next up is the Donkeys, the Denver Broncos. The Donkeys, as I like to call them. But anyways, Bo Nix, even though they have a new quarterback, Bo Nix is still not a good quarterback because he is walking into a terrible situation where your only weapons are Patrick Surtain and Cortland Sutton, and also they have a Week 1 showdown on the road in Seattle against the Seahawks. And this is the worst home away opener game that the Broncos have had in recent memory because Bo Nix is going to be running for his life week 1 against the Seattle Seahawks. Denver Broncos because y'all about to go down.
Michael, don't leave me here. Michael, help me.
Anyways, the Broncos are just not great. But anyways, moving down to the next team. Carolina Panthers. No surprise here. Carolina has not looked great. They did not look great last year, going 12-15. They were not that great. And Bryce Young has to prove himself this year. I believe he'll rise up a little more. But the Carolina Panthers are just not that great. And then the last team on here, the Arizona Cardinals. Despite them getting Marvin Harrison Jr., despite them still having Kyler Murray, the fact is still that Kyler Murray and the Cardinals have not been good since their one playoff appearance in the last 5 years, which happened in 2022, where they got eliminated in the first round to the Los Angeles Rams that would go on to win the Super Bowl that year. The Cardinals, I ain't buying the hype around him because Kyler Murray is an overrated quarterback because he is terrible. Whenever he plays against the Seahawks, he does terrible. He lost 2 fumbles in one season to the Seahawks, and it was Kobe Bryant and also along with Tariq Woolen on those plays. And I happen to remember that. I got a good memory. But anyways, that is my rankings on all of these teams. But let me know in the comments what you guys think down in the comment section below. Do you guys agree with my tier lists? And if you don't agree, shoot me in the comments with the specific categories I have. And shoot in the teams of those categories. But let me know down in the comments because I would love to hear an explanation, especially with the Steelers, especially with them. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please make sure to smash that like button down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. I will catch you all in the next one. Ciao for now.